fight for what we know this nation must do, and to fight for recovery, to fight for the people we love, that we're honoring and giving our Distinguished Service Award today to Patrick Kennedy. The award is given each year to recognize exceptional efforts with national significance to support NAMI's goal of improving the lives of people who are impacted by mental illnesses. For 16 years, Congressman Kennedy has been perhaps one of our best friends on Capitol Hill. He has represented his constituents in the state of Rhode Island, a neighbor state to me in Connecticut. And he has been more than steadfast. He has been passionate in his efforts to erase stigma, to enact legislation that would increase funding for research and expand services for people with mental illnesses. Patrick's fight against stigma is reflected in his courage in Turkey, talking openly about his own personal illness. The Wellstone Kennedy mental health parity law would not have passed without Congressman Kennedy's efforts to build an effective coalition. Nor would we have the kind of system protections for the treatment of mental illnesses and healthcare reform if it had not been for Congressman Kennedy. That's true. With his retirement imminent, it's hard to talk about retirement for Congressman Kennedy. We look forward to new ways that we're going to work with him in our NAMI movement. It is truly a personal honor. I've had the privilege of knowing the Congressman and meeting him through the years to present him today with NAMI's Distinguished Service Award. With mental illness, NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness 2010.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Thank you for your wonderful advocacy on the policy board, and for all of those who are on NAMI's board, and all of you here today who've made the effort to come to Washington and be heard and be seen. Best lobbying effort we could ask for, because you're breaking stigma by being here and by being willing to stand up and say, I'm willing to be counted. And this is an issue that affects me personally, my family personally. It affects far too many Americans personally for us not only fill this hotel and this ballroom, but every room and every ballroom in this town. And in the future, we're going to do that. But you're the ones that are here today. And you've been out there for years. The ones that have been out there for years are the special leaders, because you've been out there when it hasn't been popular. I often hear people tell me about, how great my uncles were and all my family did and all the rest. And then I go back and I look at my history books and I see that they won by the barest of majorities. President Kennedy, you would have thought today he won by a landslide. And then I hear about people saying, oh yeah, civil rights movement, all those 60s, boy, that was really something, social change. We were there marching. Yeah, well, that's interesting because, you know, it took a lot to get that done, and if half the people who said they were for civil rights back then were actually for civil rights, that thing would have been done with well before the 1960s. So a lot of people talk a good game about saying they're against discrimination and they're against bigotry and therefore respecting the dignity of the human person. But few people are willing to walk the walk when it really matters. And you all are willing to do that. And, you know, when I was growing up, I thought to myself, how in the world am I going to be able to hold a candle to all the things that my family has done before me in terms of the great work that they did for social justice and the like? And then I thought to myself, when I got here to Washington, and I saw how much work had left to be done, I thought to myself, no, wait a second, I was meant to be here now. And you know what? If Dr. King was here now, if my uncles were here now, if others were here now, this would be the fight. They would be fighting on behalf of civil rights right now. Because remember, back then, that fight was in the margins, in the shadows. It wasn't generally in the mainstream. And we're that way today. But look at how far, you know, health issues like cancer have come. 30 years ago, no one would dare breathe a word about a family member having cancer or AIDS. But today, those lobbying efforts are far surpassed anyone's imagination that they could have ever been. And ours is going to be the same. And the sooner we continue to push on, the better off we're going to be in arriving to that point ourselves. And again, that's why it's so important that all of you are here. Now, love that enthusiasm. Now, sometimes people will feel, well, you know, I can't make that difference because there's just one of me, and the challenges are too great. Actually, especially when the need is overwhelming. And all of you who are in the field know so well how overwhelming this challenge can be if you work in the trenches on the front lines. How much of a burnout it can be because of the enormous stress of trying to make ends meet in meeting the needs of people in this country without the dollars to do it. And yet you continue to do it because you're in it for the money, I can tell. So the fact of the matter is, you know, there's my father's Mass card had Matthew 25, where he said that the only place in the Bible where it talks about salvation is where, essentially paraphrasing, where you were there for the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were there for me. But in fact, in the Bible, it says in one edition, where you were there for the least one of these, my brothers and sisters, you were there for me. And the point is that you don't have to be there for everybody. As much as some of us are folks that want to do everything all at once yesterday. All we need to worry about is helping who we can in our daily lives. And if we're lucky enough, we've learned this far in our life, that public service isn't about being selfless. It's in fact about being selfish, because you get to be happier if you worry about someone else's problems rather than your own. And